Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about interactive Python scripts in Grasshopper. This is a basic technique that we are going to use in many of our generative systems, and it's very efficient and helps us when we try to simulate, when we try to run time steps in our algorithms. So let's start comparing a simple iterative version with an interactive version of the same algorithm. Let's start with um, iterative version. So this is iterative, this is interactive version, right? So, and first of all, I'll implement the basic iterative version here, and then I'll do the same algorithm in interactive setting. So let's start with very simple algorithm. Let's say we have 3 steps: initialization. We also have step 2, updates, and step 3 we have transfer data to Grasshopper. So let's say we have value equals 0. Right now I'm only using a number, but you can extend the same idea. This can be the state of your system, but for simplicity, let's keep it as a number. And the updates, the conventional way of updating a number could be I can use a loop for I in range n. I say value plus equals 1. And finally, I transfer value to Grasshopper by assigning the value that's stored here to A. That's the A that's here in the output of my component. Okay. So this is, we still need to have n. I mean, I could write n equals 100 here, but I want the user to be able to control n. So I'm going to consider that n is an input, and n should be an integer. We don't need y, we just need one input. And I'm going to create a slider from 1 to 1000. And here we have our code. Let's remember, we initialize value equals 0. For I in range, this number here, we update it with 1 here. We add 1 to the previous value stored. And then we transfer the final value to Grasshopper. Let's visualize it. I'm going to add a panel. So this is our value. If I change the slider, we should have the same value here. Let's see if it's running correctly. That's good. So now we're going to do the same steps in the interactive setting. So let's copy everything here. And I'm going to create a new Python component. You copy this code. Initialization, updates, transfer data to Grasshopper. In the interactive version, the main difference is in the stage 2 when we do the updates. In this case, I'm only going to do one update, and I'm not going to, I don't need to have a loop. Right now, let's just keep this single update and see what's going to happen, and then we're going to add a timer that will control how many times we do this update. So let's just see if this algorithm is running correctly. We should have 1 here. So basically, we are doing one update. We create a value, we update and transfer to Grasshopper. So that's it for now, but we don't want to be limited to one update. So first of all, we need to distinguish stage 1 and stage 2, because every time, now we're going to run multiple times our Python script. We're going to run once doing the initialization, and we're going to run multiple times only doing step 2. That's a single update. Let's say single update. Okay, so I'm going, first of all, I need to add a conditional block. So I need a Boolean to decide which of the states I'm going to run. Let's say we can do reset here. It's just a name of a variable, and I'm going to add a Boolean toggle. And the idea is that I can reset. When I do this, I'm basically running initialization. And when I do this, I'm running upgrade. We can change the name. In general, we call it reset, but you can call it initialization or any other number or name. Okay, so let's divide the blocks here. We have block 1 is we're going to say when we reset, we can say if reset equals true, which in Python is the same as saying if reset. And now this block is the first case, and now we are going to have else, and the second block is when this is false. So when this is true, we execute this part of the code. When this is false, we execute the second part of the code. And the transfer data to Grasshopper, we always do that, because when we initialize value, we want to transfer to Grasshopper. When we update, we also want to transfer to Grasshopper. Right, so we don't need this Y, so we just need the reset. I'll say okay, and it's going to break. Don't worry now, I'll explain later. But if we reset, value equals 0. If I set to false, we are upgrading it once. We are updating it once, so it becomes 1. Okay. So now, how do we make this update step run multiple times? What we can do, we can add a timer in Grasshopper. This is the timer. If I double click, I disable it. If I double click again, I can enable the timer. And if I right click, I can select the interval, but let's keep it simple, 1 second, and I connect to my component. Now, what's going to happen is that every 1 second, this timer is going to trigger my Python script and it's going to run it once. And now it's going to run. You notice that we were in the second stage, the update, and it's updating at every second. So this is what we want to do. Like we can initialize it, so the variable equals 0. And actually in this stage, the timer doesn't matter. We can have the timer off. And when we go to the second stage, when we do the update, we update it once, but we can turn the timer on and it will update multiple times. So that's our script. One important thing here is that it's really important to differentiate between the name of variables that are transferring data from and to Grasshopper from the variables we are going to use here. The reason is that you can say, well, this could be A, and I don't need this, but actually this is going to break. And the reason is that every time you run the component, this A is in its Python creates like a placeholder, and so it's kind of stores like a none as a placeholder for A. So even if you reset and initialize A, when you run it again to do the else, A is going to be none. And then when we try to do the single update, let's see what's going to happen. Let me just test. So I'm just saving my code to make sure it's running. And if I do reset, it's going to say I cannot do plus equal to non-type, basically because every time I run, A becomes a placeholder. So that's why this should always have a different name: value equals 0, value plus equal 1, A equals value. Okay. Yeah, and sometimes the code still breaks in the sense that I didn't run the reset step and it's trying to do the update before I initialize. So I just do it again and it's going to work. Okay, now it's working. So that's the basic idea. And in the next video, I'll show how to use geometry in the same setting.